to the Recruiting Masters podcast brought to you by the CFC Insider. We're Katie and Clint, and you're listening to another episode of the NCAA edition with our very own Quincy Forde. Quincy, we've missed you.
Yeah, glad to be back.
It's a bit odd to have NCAA football starting this time of year with the FCS schedule. Listen, tell us what this looks like over the next few months.
Yeah, it's a little interesting. Obviously, everything's a bit of a mess given the times. Everything's kind of circumstantial. Things could be changed as things go along if anything bad comes up, as we saw many times with cancellations during the FBS season. It appears about 100 of the 130 FCS teams are playing this spring. The only conference that fully canceled their season was the Ivy League, but all the other conferences intend on playing anywhere between like 4 to 8 games, it seems, in the spring. And I believe they normally have FCS normally has the full 24 team playoff going. But this year, it seems their plan is to go down to 16 teams. So,
Clint, what is you're used to obviously your coaching background. How does that affect a team playing now in the spring for the first time when usually they'd be doing off-season stuff?
Well, they've been probably chomping at the bit all through the winter and into this. So, I mean, they're active during this time of the year. But yeah, you're right. Your mind and your brain would probably take a while to catch up because this time of the year, you're going in at 5 a.m. and doing off-season workouts. You're not having a full work day and then playing on a Saturday. And then, one little caveat, I was just, as I listened to you two talk, if the really, really smart people decided not to play, I don't know. Anyways, but yeah, you're right. Totally right. This is an off-season time for most of those student athletes. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be a transition. And I'm pretty sure, like every other league that played this year, probably going to be a little sloppy to start off.
Is there many kids that are opting out for NFL draft?
I know that it seems the FCS guys who are NFL draft caliber guys aren't playing this spring. I know, right. Obviously the most notably of that group would be Trey Lance, who's supposed to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft this year. Absolutely tore up FCS last year, was the Walter Payton Award winner as the FCS most valuable player. But yeah, I know he's not playing for North Dakota State, and they've certainly seen the effects of losing him, as they have won the last 5 national championships, I think, and they just had their 39-game winning streak snapped by a team that wasn't even ranked. They're seeing that, and I know Cade Johnson at South Dakota State, who's a top FCS receiver, was a Senior Bowl guy. I don't think he's playing for them either. So
the window's too tight because they're not. It's too tight to play and then go do the combine. Yeah. So it's this is a total smart, super smart financial decision on those guys' part, because the NFL combine is going to happen. When does it happen? End of February. Pro days are going to be going.
The very first pro day was today, I think.
Oh, really?
So. Yeah, that's how tight it is. And then you get injured. You get injured now, your draft stock is 0. That's a total financial decision, which is a smart one.
We're going to get into a few of these FCS players that we were just looking on TV, looking at the schedule to see if we could find any of these games. But let's start off with Deshawn Stevens. He's a linebacker, 6'2", 255, out of Toronto, Ontario. He went to Kent School, and now he's at Maine. Tell us about him, Quincy.
Yeah, Deshawn Stevens. He's one of our CFC40 guys. I like him a lot. He was their Scout Team Player of the Year back in his first redshirt year, but more recently in 2018, he was the team's defensive MVP, and he had 120 tackles, 17 for loss, with 9 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, a fumble recovery, 2 pass breakups, and an interception in 14 games, which led to him being named second team all-conference, and Maine made the FCS playoffs semifinals, I believe. But then coming into 2019, he tore his Achilles in his very first game. So that was unfortunate for him because he was a preseason All-American coming into 2019. And he is a preseason All-American coming into this spring season again. Their first game is actually tomorrow against Delaware. So I'll hope to find some illegal streaming site to watch that as it is not on TV in my area.
We don't do anything illegal.
No, I'm above that.
Clint, do you remember, what do you remember about him?
I remember ranking him. There's actually 3 of the 4 players that we're going to talk about tonight. I remember ranking him. I remember him specifically. And he was awesome when Maine had the playoff run. And like the size and the weight is ridiculous. It'll be interesting to see how he comes back off the Achilles, because he was actually, there was a point there where I was like, when he had the 2019, prior to the Achilles injury, when he was at that point, I was like, he's so going to enter the transfer portal and end up at like a big school. And then his Achilles kind of popped. So, but yeah, I remember ranking him. He was awesome. He was awesome in high school. Went down to Kent. We saw his film there, and he was awesome. So I was always kind of shocked that he never ended up at a FBS school, but I don't know what that would be the result of. But I also never saw him in a combine format. So who knows? I don't know. Maybe he didn't run well enough, but he's definitely a beast at Maine since he kind of got through that redshirt year.
For sure. I know, like on that size front that you mentioned, at 6'2", 255, he's a little interesting because I don't think he's quite going to be, he's not quite going to be an NFL draft guy. But as a CFL draft guy, he's a guy who will certainly go in the first 3 rounds, I think. But he's a little interesting because I don't really know how teams see him playing as 6'2", 255. He's a middle linebacker at Maine, but on third downs, he usually comes off the edge and becomes kind of like a 3-4 outside linebacker type. Like he just becomes an edge rusher on third downs. But yeah, he's a little short and not really long enough to play on the edge, although there have been some successful less long edge rushers in the CFL like Kwaku Boateng. But then he's a little heavy to be a linebacker in the passing game of the CFL. It'll be interesting.
Well, our next player is Kyle Hergel. He is another Toronto native, offensive lineman. I believe he's playing right guard. He's 6'2", 295. He's one of the Clarkson Football North players. He's at UND. He only appeared in 1 game for his red shirt season. We followed Kyle quite a bit, actually. But Quincy, tell us about him.
I'm a fan of him partially because before he moved over to Football North, he was at Port Credit. So that's my school. So he's a Port Credit guy. Wish he would have stuck around. Maybe just been a one-man team for us in my freshman year because we're not very good at football. But yeah, he's a guy. He's like ridiculously strong. I know back in high school, he's stronger now, but back in high school, he was putting up over like 30 reps at 225. I know like Larry's good with his guys. He gets them like really strong. Just a bunch of his guys, like his offensive linemen, seems they all come out of high school like benching 225 for over 30 reps. It's ridiculous. But yeah, this guy, Kyle Hergel, started all 12 games last year as the right guard at North Dakota, and he was a freshman, redshirt freshman. And he was named FCS Independence Newcomer of the Year last year. But yeah, he's a guy, as I mentioned, he's ridiculously strong, and you can see that with his power. He's just a dominant run blocker, really. Like I also saw some clip of him in their last game. I just saw on Twitter earlier today where he just bulldozes people in the run game. Like he's ridiculously strong, and he has a bit of a nasty rep. Like he always finishes his block, kind of likes putting guys in the dirt a lot. Good hand placement, and should be a highly regarded prospect for a couple years for the CFL draft.
Well, when you were saying he's a little bit nasty, you can tell that just from his mugshot there on the website.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding.
What you liked Kyle quite a bit, Clint? I
liked his mugshot on the roster. He's like, it's like, I'm so gonna whoop your ass. Anyways, he's one of the most dominant ever since we started doing the lists, or I started doing the lists with CFC. And then Football North kind of started to really kind of heat up and get kids from all over the place and send them off to different schools down south. He's probably the most dominant of all the linemen, but for sure the interior linemen that I've seen over the last like 5 years. And I remember when he was coming out and he was getting his offers and so on and so forth, and he wasn't getting big offers, but the tackle beside him was. We used to shake our head because the only thing that like held him back from getting major like FBS offers would have been like 2 inches.
Yeah, 6'2".
Yeah.
So like, and there was even coaches, because I remember I used to not bag on him, but I would ask Larry, like, how is he not gone? And even like some of the other coaches there, and like, I remember I think it might have been the Kent State coach, or one of them was like, if he was 1 inch taller, but he's the most dominant interior offensive lineman I've seen in my reviewing of the lists over the last few years. And he is, you guys are right. He wants to like completely whoop your ass. And I've seen a lot of both Jamie, who works with Larry at Football North, who does a good job with their O-lineman. Like, he's possibly one of the hardest workers I think they said they've ever had. Good for that guy.
I heard the same thing about him. They would talk about like what a hard worker this guy was and just what a gym rat he was. So
Yeah, he always had stuff on his social media of his workouts.
And not like look at me, I'm going to do 1 rep and like
No,
I'm not cheating the grind.
stuff.
No, yeah, like doing like 10 pull-ups and then like lifting some ridiculous weight and then doing stuff that linemen shouldn't do and then lifting some more weight. He will, like, and you know for sure that 6'2" is going to hover over him, and then he's going to end up in the CFL, and then he's going to be like in the CFL for 10 or 12 years.
Who would he be like? You always give a comparison.
See, there was no like a dominant. See, the thing that will derail it a bit is he's an unbelievable run blocker, and in the CFL they throw the ball 75% of the time.
yeah.
So for him to unload and uncork kind of like in the run game will happen. But if he transitions to like being able to like pro and like actually, stop pass rushers, I could totally see him being like like a Scott Flory or something like that, like a super athletic, super smart lineman who just kind of hangs around, because Scott Flory was an all-star forever and is going to go in the Hall of Fame. But I could see him being like that. I could totally see him being like a Scott Flory. He won't be able to run block like he does he will. It's just he won't do it as much.
Yeah. Well, it'll be fun to watch him. I hope that we can get some of these games. I just want to let all you guys know who are watching or listening, you can become a CFC Prospect Ambassador to help put your football team, your high school football team, on the map by displaying your personal profiles on CanadaFootballChat.com. We're offering a pool of prizes for all CFC Prospect Ambassadors as you guys help grow the Canadian football community. So this is how it works. You get 11 teammates or more to submit their personal profile to the CFC Prospect database, which you can do on CanadaFootballChat.com under the Prospect Search tab. There's the drop-down menu will say Submit Your Profile. So you just go on that and you enter in all the information. Then you find your teammates' profiles on CFC and submit their profile ID numbers, which it'll prompt you to do. Then you collect your prizes after submission. And the more teammates that sign up, the better prizes you receive. So what are these prizes? Well, for 12 teammates, you get a CFC t-shirt. For 24, this one I love. You get a CFC Insider Gold discount. So that's 50% off an annual Gold Insider membership. And then for 36, you get the annual recruiting plan as well. So those are pretty cool rewards. And all you got to do is get your teammates and yourself to throw in your player profiles, which is awesome. So Quincy, we're going to go on to our next prospect, Kail Dava. He's a defensive lineman, 6'3", 281. He's out of Mississauga, Ontario. Another Clarkson Football North kid. He was at Tennessee Tech. He was named the team Football North, the team's Rookie of the Year and most valuable player and defensive MVP. And I know, Clint, this is one of your favorite players. So Quincy, what do you have to say about Dava?
I know last year he was a true freshman and carved out a role for himself at Tennessee Tech as a rotational defensive tackle. He was a freshman All-American FCS player in 2019 last year with 17 tackles and 4 sacks in 11 games. And so far this year in the spring, because Tennessee Tech's season's underway in this spring, he's had 5 tackles and a tackle for loss in 1.5 tackles for loss, actually, in 2 games played this year so far. But yeah, he was a 3-star guy out of Football North, another one of Larry's guys. And he had 3 offers, I believe, from Tennessee Tech, Delaware State, and Kent State.
What did you like about him?
I liked him from the time he was like a young guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was always super athletic and like super. He was like actually athletic, like twitchy athletic. So I remember seeing him, and he played a bit on the edge, and then he played a bit inside, and then might have been his grade 10 year or grade 11 year. He was like, he had the best film, one of the better films I've ever seen. And I remember him having those 3 offers, and I was like, oh, he's going to go to Kent, because that was the lone FBS offer, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then somehow he ended up at Tennessee Tech. And I was like, I have no idea how that happened, because he could have just driven down the highway and he would have been at Kent State. So he was one of my favorite defensive linemen that came off a really, that's when Football North was in its kind of younger years, but came off a really good North roster. He would have practiced against Hergel. They would have butted heads a lot. So he was one of my favorite, and I'm not saying it, I just said it about Kyle Hergel, and I'll say it about Dava. He was one of my favorite defensive linemen. And he was a really good kid to talk to, too. And he knew he was going to be special because his dad was a bodybuilder.
What does that have to do with anything?
He's jacked. He's a big dude. Real good football player. On
that note, we're going to head right into our last prospect, Mike Beaudry, a quarterback. Quite a big quarterback at 6'5", 250 pounds. He's from Orlando, Florida, but he was born in Saskatchewan. I believe he moved to Florida when he was 11, so he has dual citizenship. This kid has quite a path. He went to Haggerty High School, then he went to West Florida, and then he went to UConn, and then for a season, and now he's at Idaho. So we were trying to figure out that he's actually, Clint, you said he's used up all of his eligibility he could possibly use.
Well, Quincy can count it if he wants, because he redshirted, so that one's done. So then he medical redshirted, so that one's done. So he's in year 3 and he's a freshman. All right, that's fine. So that was his 3rd year at West Florida. And then he played a year, and then he all of a sudden transfers to UConn. So that would be year 4. And then from there, he spent 1 year at UConn.
Yeah, you got
2.
2 years at UConn.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's year 5. So that's 4-5. And then he has the COVID year. So that's 6. And now he's at Idaho State. So
No, he's at Idaho.
Idaho.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's 7. And if you look at it, it says he's a grad student. So that's it. So he has somehow pulled 7 years out of the NCAA. That's unbelievable. That is. I'll leave the rest for you folks, but I think that's unbelievable. He's going to get a pension from the NCAA. Anyways, you guys can talk about the player. Sorry, Quincy. I was amazed. Like, lucky number 7.
No, yeah, I was going to touch on that too, like his lengthy NCAA career, because he was the first official signee at West Florida's new football program, and he would have joined them in 2015. They're a D2 school, right? So joined them in 2015, redshirted 2015, and then missed all of 2016 with a leg injury. But in 2017, led the team to the national championship game, went 266 for 483 passing, which is 55%, with 29 touchdowns, 13 interceptions in 14 games played. And then transferred to UConn for 2018 to move up to the D1 level, but got hurt and missed the whole season there. And then 2019, last year, he went 53 for 83, which is 64% passing in 4 games played, with I think 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, which isn't necessarily great, but a bad team around him at UConn. And 4 games played at UConn in 2019 before getting hurt again and missing the rest of the year. And now he's at Idaho, and Idaho's played 1 game this spring, and it was against Eastern Washington, and they won 28-21, but their last touchdown came with like a minute left in the game, so that was a nail-biter game. But he went 22 for 45 passing with 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. But yeah, I was watching his 2017 highlights just before we got on here, And I was kind of surprised, actually, because his rushing stats don't suggest it at all, but he looked like decently mobile as a passer, not really a runner, but like a guy who could create with his legs a little bit to then make a pass, like kind of pass on the run outside of the pocket, which impressed me a little bit. But the interesting thing is he's put on 15 pounds since his year at West Florida in 2017, which is a little weird for a quarterback. But yeah, he looked pretty accurate to the intermediate and deep levels of the field and could throw with touch, with good anticipation, I thought, with respectable mobility. So he's an interesting guy because I think possibly could be like a late round flyer at the quarterback position in the CFL draft this year. Not same caliber guy as like Michael O'Connor or Nathan Rourke, not quite there, but could possibly get into a camp. So interesting always with the Canadian quarterbacks.
Now, Quincy, all these guys that we talked about, they're all CFC 40s, correct?
I think the only one who was a CFC 40 was Deshawn Stevens, because Kail Dava and Kyle Hergel are still like a couple years out. But Mike Beaudry and Deshawn Stevens are both in this draft class. I don't have Mike Beaudry in the CFC 40 just because like at the quarterback position, it's a bit of an uphill battle. Not really sure he's the guy who's ever really going to be something in the CFL. But I mean, yeah, it's always interesting with the Canadian quarterbacks, though.
So you said you watched that game with Mike Beaudry against Eastern Washington?
No, I didn't watch it. I just saw the stats after.
Because there was who was playing on Eastern Washington?
Nolan All.
No, yeah,
Nolan All.
Here.
Yeah, he didn't. He wasn't playing that game though, or at least he wasn't on the box score. I was on the lookout for him too.
That's pretty cool. So I guess we have to try and find a place to watch these games.
The legal streaming site.
Illegal streaming site. That's right. So we'll try and get some of these players, but we're gonna. How many Canadian players do you think are playing in this spring season, Quincy? Off the top of your head.
I have no idea. Like a decent amount though. I know that. Like at Maine, I think there's like I want to say like maybe 6 Canadians there, and then I think they have the most Canadians of any FCS school. I think like just as many in the FCS as FBS, I think.
It's actually more logical. Well, it won't make sense to people, but it's probably easier for FBS kids from Canadian to go down than FCS because FCS has fewer scholarships. And they also, most of them are state schools. So the kids they do get from Canada, they have to pay out-of-state fees.
Like international fees?
So not only are they losing like a scholarship to a Canadian, but they've doubled the amount of money that the scholarship's worth, most likely. But there are schools like North Dakota. Where's Hergel? North Dakota State or North Dakota?
North Dakota.
So there's some of those schools like North Dakota, I'm pretty sure, well, I actually know, in fact, that they consider parts of Canada along the border, they consider that in-state.
Oh.
Yeah, so like some of those Canadians who say come from Manitoba would be considered an in-state prospect. So now their scholarship is worth like $10,000 a year, where Hergel's is probably worth like $30,000 because Hergel's from Toronto. So that's something you got to take into account. That's why, just echoing Quincy's comment of there's just as many in FBS as there is in FCS, is because the FCS, the team really, really needs to want you because they're going to throw down double the amount of money with half the total of scholarship.
And I know you brought up North Dakota, so just on a little tangent here, North Dakota is actually ranked 4th in the country in FCS right now. So I mean they're doing pretty well. But yeah, they're ahead of North Dakota State now, which you thought you'd never see the day. But
wasn't there an article that came out on them maybe 2 years ago that all the teams were bagging on them because they always win and blah blah blah? Was that the? It's
about North Dakota State and North Dakota.
Okay.
They put a lot of money into their programs and their program development, more so than some of the other schools in their conference or division or whatever the scenario.
And teams were like pulling out, didn't want to play them and all that. It was kind of a negative article.
It was a negative article. Well, yeah. When you win 6 national championships in a row,
Yeah, I don't know how bad I'm wanting to play North Dakota State either.
Well, yeah, it's because Alabama wins 1 or 2 and everybody poops on them.
Yeah.
These guys won 6 in a row. So there was guys who went there and they did the Mike Beaudry timeline and won a championship every year.
Yeah, I know North Dakota State, they would have went from having Carson Wentz at quarterback to Easton Stick at quarterback, who was a pick a couple years ago in the NFL. And now Trey Lance was their quarterback last year, who's going to be first round. So that's 3 back-to-back top NCAA Division I quarterbacks, let alone FCS, but very top tier NCAA D1 caliber guys they have.
They obviously develop players. A lot of those teams, they have the kids. They always say they're gonna, what's the old saying? They'll get their hands and feet from Florida, and they'll get their heart and soul from Dakota or North Dakota. So what all that means is they do a great job recruiting locally, and then with those few select scholarships, they go get a dude somewhere. So, and then obviously there's a tremendous amount of, when you have a culture that's built on championships,
good things happen.
Well,
I know.
Players, so yeah.
North Dakota State, I was looking forward to it before COVID came, so this would have been a while ago, where this was at the back of my head, and I was thinking about it. North Dakota State actually had their season opener for 2020 before COVID became a thing, scheduled against Oregon. So I think that was kind of arguably the most highlighted matchup in all of college football before COVID came along. So that would have been interesting. And I know North Dakota State a couple of years back, I want to say 2018, played Iowa, who was a top 30 FBS team. Obviously they're really good. They have been for a while, but and they beat Iowa. So it's just probably a team that should be in the FBS.
That's it for us, folks. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Recruiting Masters NCAA with Quincy. Be sure to follow us on our Facebook, Twitter @ChatFootball, Instagram, CFC_football, and YouTube. And don't forget to purchase your exclusive CFC Insider Gold membership today for access to the rankings that we talked about, CFC40s, analysis and daily football recruiting news across Canada. Thanks, Quincy, for joining us.
Thanks. It's always fun.
This has been the Recruiting Masters, brought to you by the CFC Insider.
Looking for more exclusive Canadian recruiting content? Become a CFC Insider Gold or Silver member today for access to rankings, analysis, and the latest recruiting news from across the country.